AI and generative AI in asset management, presented by the Deloitte AI Institute. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Snehal Vagulde. I'm a managing director within our investment management practice, and I serve clients in this space, and I also lead our AI business for this sector. I'm so happy to be here today. This topic is very close to my heart, and I'm promising you that we're going to have a riveting conversation on a couple different areas. We have about 40 minutes or so, and we're going to break the discussion into four main parts. We'll start off a little bit with State of Union, what's happening in the space. We'll then talk about some implementation focus areas. We'll then pivot to some challenges, and then we'll bring it all together with where is all of this headed, right? What's the outlook and some advice. But before we get started, I would love to introduce you to our amazing panelists. So why don't we get started with Roland?
Thanks, Snehal. Hi, everyone. Roland Waz. I'm a principal in Deloitte Consulting, and I lead the investment management practice, working with clients across traditional asset managers, private capital, private equity complexes, as well as asset servicers. Happy to be here too.
Thank you, Roland. Jana?
Hi, my name is Jana Bohr, and I sit within the strategy practice. And I partner with a lot of financial service clients around their digital transformation. So the past few years, been really focused around AI, generative AI. So that's helping clients through their AI strategy development, their operating model design to stand up and support these new offerings, as well as use case development, building out roadmaps, and ultimately launching solutions. So excited to share more about that.
Thank you, Jana. And Cliff?
Thank you, Snehal, and hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Cliff Goss, and I'm thrilled to be here today. Been with the firm for 21 years, and I'm a partner that focuses on AI risk management and regulations. In that capacity, I've spent the last couple of years helping my investment management clients, as well as broader FSI clients, really think through the impacts of the global AI regulatory landscape, as well as the emerging risks that GenAI agents and so forth are starting to present, and what organizations can do to manage them. So just really happy to be here today talking with the group.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cliff. Before we jump into this, you all, a couple of quick housekeeping items. One, we would love for this to be an engaging conversation. It's always more fun that way. So please feel free to participate through the Q&A box. We will do our best to address the questions along the way. If not, we'll come back to them in the end. And lastly, one favor, after we finish up the debrief, there will be a pop-up on your screen for a survey. To kindly complete that, give us feedback on what you thought about today's session, as well as if there are topics of interest or anything we can do better. We are all ears, right? With that, let's get started. So we'll start off the conversation with the first part around State of Union, right? And what is fascinating about this topic is there's never a dull moment, right? If you go back to the Thanksgiving of 2022, since then, the pace of innovation in this space, both from a hardware side, a software side, and then bringing it all together from an application side to an industry has been amazing, right? It's constantly thinking of what to do, what is it, how to apply. And with that context, Roland, maybe I'll come to you first. When it comes to AI and Gen AI, right, like from your vantage point across the broader industry, what do you think? Like, how is this going to transform our space?
Yeah, I mean, Snehal, it's no surprise that AI is a top agenda topic for the C-suite right now. There is clearly tremendous potential for transformation, and we're seeing almost every organization be in the midst of a journey at various degrees of maturity, of course, in terms of adopting AI and Gen AI. And this might be the wave of AI/automation that will have a massive impact on the investment management industry. If you back up a second, all of our clients are in the midst of a transformation journey. Almost every investment manager out there is inventing and being innovative on new products, thinking about custom solutions, thinking about hyper-personalization, thinking about bringing private and public markets products together. And all of that is increasing the operational complexity of their business So we've been on a transformation journey to simplify operating models, to simplify operations, and to be more nimble in terms of launching new products, and transforming the business. And I think the rise of AI and Gen AI presents a really unique opportunity to accelerate the adoption of technology and the value of technology, ranging from um, operational efficiency, automation of manual processing, all the way to generating alpha and differentiating on client experience. And we are seeing efforts that literally cut across the whole value chain, from sales and marketing being reinvented, to front office capabilities being infused with Gen AI, whether it's in research, or other areas of the investment process, to operations being reimagined, all the way to shared functions such as finance, HR, and legal. So it is truly a revolution, and no one can afford to be left behind. So we're seeing a lot of investment um, in the adoption and the implementation of AI and Gen AI across the spectrum.
Yes, fascinating, right? You and I've had many of these conversations with clients, and it's like a gamut of topics. So thank you for sharing
Yep.
that, Rohit. Jana, maybe I'll come to you next. And again, you and I have done many of these sessions, and the topics have varied over the years. I would say every 3 months we have something different to talk to our clients. So why don't you share a little bit about how have those conversations evolved? Like, what is top of mind for clients through the journey, so we can do a bit of a journey conversation?
Sure, happy to. And really, we've just started these conversations over the last 4 years, right? And end of 2022. And early on, I'd say that the conversation was really focused around education. So people being able to understand what are the tools out there. And that's really transitioned into, over the last 2 years, really focused more on scaling. So on the education piece, the conversations were really around being able to prove out the technology. So people wanting to get their hands dirty, understand what is this technology. It's great to leverage ChatGPT, see the democratization of the technology and the access now, but how can we actually use that within the enterprise? And I think one of the conversations that we were having was really focused around how can we use this technology, put the proper guardrails around it, and make sure that we were ensuring responsible AI adoption as people started building out their proofs of concept and kind of some one-off types of use cases. Oh, that really shifted though in probably 2024, where we started really focusing more on that scaling piece. So really, how do we bring these POCs into production? How do we start to see returns in all of the investments that everybody's been making into the technology and experimentation? And how do we actually drive more impact for the business? And that shifted the conversation to one-off solutions, to really thinking about more of a vertical integration of multiple tasks being automated, thinking about what Roland was just mentioning, shifting from purely thinking about cost savings and efficiency plays to now expanding that to even further of efficiencies across functions and capabilities, efficiencies in terms of full automation, so that the agentic conversation has really come into the hot topics with our clients recently, and thinking about how you can actually use this to overall transform your enterprise and think about delivering your business in a different way. So, to, I guess, sum it up, I think early on it was education, really the feasibility of the technology, the risk management around that, and now more so around scaling. How do we think about monetization or return on these investments we're making, and how do we use this as another tool in our toolbox for transformation of the business?
Yeah, I know there's never a dull moment, right? Always something innovative. With that, maybe Cliff will come to you to touch upon perhaps the responsible side of things that Jana was just talking about. So tell us a bit more about, from a risk and a regulatory perspective, what are clients currently focused on?
Yeah, yeah. And to understand where we are now, it's good to think about where most investment managers have come from over the last year or so since Gen AI became the hot topic. A lot really has changed from the regulatory and the risk space. In the early days, this was very abstract. And most organizations didn't really know what GenAI meant for them, and we knew about some of the risks, and you read a lot about things like hallucination, a lot of the prompt injection, and the cyber risks, and so forth. And most organizations were very scared of these very real risks and took fairly draconian approaches to risk management at the time. We're not going to allow any sort of GenAI. We can't open ourselves up, and so forth. By now, I think some of the benefits that Roland and Jen are talking about, people have started to realize we're starting to see GenAI being embedded within vendor solutions, general productivity solutions. Most organizations are starting to play around with bespoke solutions. And so there's a better appreciation for what the risk really is. What type of data are we really using? How much reliance are we really putting on here? How much risk are we really opening up to ourselves? And so, people are taking a much more pragmatic approach to risk management at this point. And the thing that I think that most of my clients are really focused on is striking the right balance between that innovation and the risk management. So really thinking about what are the risks that the organization faces, and how do we put in place a structure so that we have the right people at the right parts of the AI lifecycle doing what they need to do to make sure that we're managing those risks. A GenAI model that's using PII data or is interfacing with a client is very different from a risk profile from something that's used as an aid to someone's day-to-day job. So people are really thinking about that balance. The other thing I think that has changed more recently is people looking at responsibility and the risk management side, not so much as a requirement, as something we have to do to manage risk, but people looking at it as an enabler to enable more adoption of GenAI. For example, GenAI solutions, agentic AI, that will drive competitive advantage at all of our organizations. People will not adopt those solutions more broadly if they don't trust or have confidence in the output. And so a lot of organizations are saying, well, what activities should we do, risk management activities that's going to help people get comfortable and build their confidence. Therefore, we can really seize our advantage. So again, a lot of the culture around it is changing from purely risk management for the sake of risk management to, hey, how does we also derive additional value from the risk management process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. So to kind of sum it up the State of Union, what I heard from all three of you, it's really a couple words, right? One, definitely top of mind, very much an agenda item in pretty much every meeting we all have been in. Continuous evolution, rapid innovation. The current buzzword is agentic AI and scaling AI, right? And from a risk and a regulatory perspective, the culture and the approach has definitely shifted a little bit from super conservative to let's figure out a way to make this happen and use it responsibly, right? So thank you for sharing those perspectives. Let's pivot a little bit, right? And this is something, Cliff, you said, which struck in my head, because as we've all had these conversations, we see sort of different personas that are evolving at our clients, right? Everyone's appetite for AI is different. So maybe, Jana, I'll come to you. And if you could help us sort of frame the different personas of clients we've interacted with, that'd be really helpful, I think, for our audience.
Sure. And when we're talking about personas, you can also think about this as where our clients are within the maturity curve. And as Roland had mentioned earlier, when we talk to our clients, there is a wide spectrum of maturity and enablement of these solutions within their enterprises. So we'll start kind of with the people who are still dipping their toe in. We kind of think about these and have branded or categorized these as possibility seekers. So think about clients who maybe don't have anything live in production yet, but are still looking at the potential, are participating in calls like this to hear about how this type of technology is shifting, how people in the industry are transforming their own operations or internal teams. So what these possibility seekers are looking for more, gathering that evidence, building in the infrastructure in order to have that trust that Cliff was talking about in order to adopt some of these solutions. So one thing that we've seen a lot of these types of clients look to those vendor solutions where they don't maybe need to have as much of the technical know-how and personnel to be able to launch their own solutions, but still can take advantage of the technology through things like a Microsoft Copilot, using summarization features for their emails, helping to get small incremental wins and efficiencies for their team members or internal teams. The second group that I would say that we're seeing in terms of the maturity curve is people who have gone a little bit further. So maybe gone beyond the vendor solutions and rolled out some of their proofs of concept into production. Generally, this kind of looks like one-off solutions where they have a specific application that's leveraged for one specific team. So one thing that we've seen very frequently being used are any kind of knowledge management tools. So a lot of people looking to layer on a chatbot for a bunch of policies. So instead of having to go through your hundreds of policies, you can instead maybe ask your HR chatbot internally, what is my vacation policy, or when will I get more vacation days, right? What does that policy look like? So we've also seen that used in more on frontline type of applications as well with call centers. So having those team members who are actually answering client calls, being able to, instead of having to go through documentation, understanding what are the limitations for, or limitations maybe in terms of being able to send money in through the portal or be able to use the portal, they instead can ask the chatbot and get a very clear summary of instructions that they can then provide that personal touch and communication to those clients, and increase the amount of calls that they are able to actually address and really end up with better customer service at the end of the day. The last bucket that we're looking at really are those pioneers who are kind of trailblazing the adoption of Gen AI. So they have things in production and they're thinking about more, how can they think about scaling? And one of the things that we've also been talking to about these clients is a lot of these clients have started to think about full automation, having agents that can do front to end tasks without that human in the loop. And the next level of that conversation is now multi-agent architecture. So how can you actually have agents who can communicate with one another in order to automate parts of the process? Not to say that humans are fully not in the loop. There's still an oversight component to that, of course, but the individual capability or task or review of a document perhaps could end-to-end be done through specific agents that are being built out. One thing that we've seen people doing with that is in the RFP process, actually taking in the RFP, being able to create a summary, and being able to then make the determination on who should actually be responding to that RFP, and handing that off to the next team member to be able to build out a response and a first draft, which then would go to a person.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really, really helpful framing, Jan. And to our audience, really a self-reflection type of a question. Do you currently fit as a possibility seeker, pursuer, or pioneer? And honestly, our clients have been like moving across on this spectrum. So definitely, have a think at it. Rohit, maybe I'll come to you next. We've been helping our clients on this journey for a while now, right? Perhaps you could speak to a few use cases or case studies that we've helped as a practice in the space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there is a monumental shift from traditional use case mindset to kind of the agentic persona based mindset. So we use the term persona to talk about the maturity of clients, but I think the true value, to unlock value out of AI investments, it's the pivot from a use case, which I would view as a particular function or process that you'd want to automate, to really more of a persona-based automation and GenAI or AI enablement. Think of like a sales analyst, an inside salesperson, a marketing operations analyst. Think of a research analyst, and really trying to develop AI capabilities, agentic AI capabilities, to effectively supplement the workforce in a truly vertically integrated fashion. I think that's the pivot that is going to unlock a ton of value for our clients, because as we all know, all our clients operate in a business that is, essentially biggest cost is human capital. There's a need to scale and increase complexity without adding headcount. So how do you do that? How do you enable that scalability? And I think some of the recent innovations from an AI perspective will enable us to automate things that historically were very difficult to automate. It's one thing to use legacy automation technology to automate a particular task or an activity. It's another thing to be able to automate effectively an entire persona, or have fully agentic capabilities to supplement your frontline teams, your sales teams, your investment teams, and so on. So I think that pivot, Snehal, is going to be key, because you and I lived through the RPA age where adoption actually ended up lagging because the business case never actually held. You just couldn't develop anything that truly eliminated the need for additional headcount because it was always 5% of somebody's job. I think the age of AI is going to unlock tremendous value from an operational efficiency and scalability perspective, as well as differentiate through the investment process, the sales, distribution, and marketing processes in that frontline perspective. So to kind of bring this to life, if you really think about what's happening in distribution, sales, distribution, and marketing, you think about the automation of sales activities, that any prep for sales conversation, sales meeting. Jana touched on RFPs in the institutional space, but you see also an intermediary space. How do you engage with advisors? How do you make sure your sales teams are fully empowered with all of the information, details on products, ability to position different types of products that may not be in their sweet zone. We talked about private markets. That adds a level of complexity. AI can help bridge that gap with the right investments in that space. Marketing in our industry has been a heavily, largely manual set of activities around content creation, digital content, as well as marketing operations. AI can revolutionize the way you approach marketing and potentially deliver improved value at reduced cost. And then you work downstream to the investment process. We've seen clients invest in research type analyst personas and agentic capabilities focused on specific asset classes and really looking to unlock value and speed, research and insight, putting it in the hand of portfolio managers to make decisions quickly. Again, asset class specific, which is exactly the differentiation you want, not automating run-of-the-mill activities, and really looking to deliver value. You look at effectively active investment professionals, PMAs, and all the work they do in support of PMs. How do you supplement that capacity and that capability to improve the speed to market and the speed of analysis for your portfolio managers and traders? And as you work downstream to middle and back office, a ton of operational efficiency. A lot of the use cases that clients have struggled with, like client onboarding, client service activities, inquiries, are now much more readily available and can be automated and orchestrated at the far end of the spectrum that Jana was describing. And of course, we're seeing a lot of operational efficiency in places like procurement and legal. Things like contract-related capabilities are now much easier to attain. And we also see it in finance and HR. You mentioned employee engagement, right? And how do you actually change the way employees engage with their HR business partners and HR teams? The same thing applies for finance around cost center owners and ability to get information at your fingertip with insights and commentary is much more attainable today. So we're seeing use cases across the board. And again, that shift from a particular business process step to truly persona-based automation, both internally and externally, to deliver value to clients and front office professionals alike.
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely a shift that's different from RPA. Is going to give like 10x results, right? So that's fascinating. Cliff, maybe I'll come to you next. I think with AI, especially with generative AI, new risks were sort of introduced in the system, right? So what are some of the things that clients are currently doing to get ready for some of these, at scale implementations and drive full value out of that?
Yeah. Oh, an awful lot. So when we talk about risks, we almost bifurcate into new risks that the organization has never seen being exposed to for the first time because of Gen AI and agents.
Mhm.
And we think about risks that we've dealt with in the past, but are being amplified in new or different ways. For example, bias, or dealing
Mhm.
with black boxes and so forth. So organizations have really put a lot of time and structure to identifying, classifying these risks, and then putting together a structure to address these risks. And I would say most organizations that are sort of leading in this space take a two-pronged approach. You have top-down risk management, and what I
Mhm.
mean by top-down risk management is the softer side of risk management. It's the policies, the procedures, the roles and responsibilities. So taking a step back and saying, all right, from the time in which we're going to develop or deploy a Gen AI or agentic solution, who needs to do what in the entire life cycle? What are the risks? How do we identify which types of risks are being presented by this new solution? How do we know when to rope in, someone on the modeling side or the cyber side, or maybe legal or compliance, or if there's an ethics issue and so forth? So what is the governing structure and the policies and the procedures to run the entire life cycle? That is really, really important, especially as the number of solutions increases. Then there's a bottoms up type of risk management that
Hmm.
leading organizations have put in place, and that's at the model level. So that's things like model validation or cyber assessments at
Mhm.
the individual solution level. So that's where that classification of new risk versus existing risk comes into play. Many large investment managers, for example, they already have a structure for model validation. It's not a new thing to them. They've got people who already focus on performing statistical tests to challenge models, identify weakness, and so forth. So to do that bottoms up risk management, it's about getting with those people and helping them think through, well, what are some of the new risks? Hallucination. What could we do to test for hallucination, or toxicity in a chatbot? What is it? How does it occur? What can we do to test for it and identify it? So many organizations on the bottoms up side are actually building out testing playbooks
Mhm.
that can be used either by first line during development or by second line or by both to try to identify and test and get comfortable with these solutions. Another one is around monitoring. Ongoing monitoring has sort of renewed focus in this world of Gen AI and agents because of the nature of these models that they change fairly quickly. They get retrained on new data. People are going back and saying, well, how do we normally monitor models and what can we do here? The one thing I do want to mention that I think is really important on this topic is that most organizations, large and small, don't need to start from scratch in this topic. There already exists, for the most part, cyber procedures and model risk procedures and legal and compliance on matters of ethics, data risk, and so forth. It's about thinking about where the gaps are and where things could more fully be enhanced to, or where things be enhanced to more fully address the risks, and then tying things together with something like a policy, and making sure that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities and having sort of set processes through the life cycle. That's really what we're seeing organizations that are taking this seriously put in place.
Yeah, that honestly, Cliff, is quite advanced in terms of really operationalizing the risk management part of it, right? So thank you so much for sharing that perspective, and really trying to bring the second section to a closure. We talked about the different personas where our asset management lie. Roland talked about a bunch of different use cases, but then also really looking at it more from like a persona and end-to-end agentic sort of capabilities that will really help you shift your perspective from narrow use cases to more broader impact. And then, Cliff, you brought us home with regards to the top down and the bottom up methods that our clients are implementing to manage the risk around the implementation. So let's now pivot to the third section of our discussion, which is around challenges. Look, no technology, comes without its own set of challenges. In the history of humankind, we've always found a way to overcome them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? And Roland, maybe I'll come to you first. When it comes to AI, Gen AI type of projects and investments, like what are some of the challenges our clients are seeing in this space? I think, Roland, we might not be able to hear you. Let me have the organizers check your mic again. There we go.
Uh,
Back up.
okay, you're in mute and I mute, and eventually it'll work.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
When it comes to challenges, I think the number one challenge is the fact that the landscape and the technology is advancing so fast. What you build today in 6 months could be table stakes.
Mm.
So that raises kind of a point of how do you really prioritize and decide where to focus your finite resources in terms of investment, and how do you truly focus on areas of differentiation, because almost every platform provider you have in your ecosystem, whether it's um, your CRM or your investment platform or your finance and HR systems, everybody's investing in Gen AI, and you will see advancements happening from those providers very, very quickly, and likely solving for um, key use cases or situations that you might have solved for as you experimented with Gen AI. So that's the number one challenge you have to get comfortable with, that you may invest in some use cases that in about a year's time may be replaced by more industrial solutions. And I would argue that's okay, because we are on a learning journey, and clients that have embarked on that and kind of felt this pain of, we just built something and now it's available um, on the market and easy to adopt, have to accept that that puts them ahead of everybody else, because now their ability to build the next set of agentic capabilities and use cases is definitely ahead of their peers. So you can't afford to wait. But that is probably the number one challenge that I see. Beyond that, if you think about, how do we, how do we really ensure that we are investing in adoption? Again, back to the pace of change. Things are happening so quickly. Your average employee um, will struggle to keep up with the latest. Some are going to be curious and they're ahead of their peers, but the vast majority will require a substantial investment in training and upskilling and reimagining how they do their business today. And we've seen this with almost every technical advancement that we've implemented in this industry, is that adoption and change management tends to lag. And historically, you kind of could afford to wait a longer period of time for adoption to kind of settle in, and people change their ways. I think with AI, that adoption cycle needs to be so much faster.
Mm.
And that will likely be the longest pole in the tent in terms of unlocking value, because while you can crank out net new capabilities and build new solutions, if people don't adopt them and don't use them, you're not going to realize that value. So it's uh, that is probably the second and more difficult challenge to solve, from what I see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think something you said, Roland, that, I think it's, Jen, I'm going to come to you with this question, right? Roland mentioned a little bit about adoption. And we've had some nerd out sessions on this, saying, well, technology is technology. It's really how people use it, right? And honestly, we're at like this transformative time where until now, we've all always been taught to go chase the answer, right? Like 2 + 2 = 4. Like who does it fastest, right? Now it's almost like 180 degrees opposite. It's like, who can ask the best questions, right? It's fundamentally different. And we have there's
Hmm.
such a huge element of unlearning that has to happen. So maybe, Jana, why don't you tell us a little bit about, the human side of the challenge when it comes to AI and Gen AI implementations?
Sure. And the adoption challenges certainly are hot topics with a lot of the clients who have already developed things or are giving access and
Mm.
licenses to vendor solutions to their team members, and they're coming to us and saying, well, why is no one using that? So some of the conversations we've been having are around helping adoption through training, as well as literacy on understanding what can these tools do and how can you best and most successfully interact with them. One of the things that we get a lot of questions around is, is AI going to be taking my jobs? And I think we saw a couple questions in the chat around that. And one of the responses that we've been giving is that it's not necessarily that AI is going to replace you as a team member, but someone who knows how to leverage AI best to become most efficient at their job and come out with the best outputs could replace you. So it's really important to make sure that you are thinking about how do you breed that culture of innovation across all of your team members, especially the team members who are in the weeds and really understand the day-to-day processes, because they're the ones that can identify the best opportunities for transformation of your programs and projects. And we've been doing this ourselves actually as Deloitte, is pushing out trainings, getting people to start playing with the technology and the tools that are out there. And one way that has been helpful for us, and we've seen this be helpful for clients, is really be able to identify across maybe functional areas that you're looking for people to adopt these solutions, those evangelists for those tools who are familiar and comfortable with playing with the tools and actually showing within someone's day-to-day workflow how it can help them do their job faster and smarter. So not just, I can go into this chat and ask a question, but maybe going back to one of those examples of someone in a call center, yes, that's great and can be helpful. But let's say you're on a call. I had this be able to provide an example of being on a call with a client who was asking a question around a type of investment, perhaps that you're not familiar with. Instead of just sending them the document, can you actually ask for a summary, be able to share that summary with the client, and then help to pinpoint and maybe reduce the number of cycles of questions that you have that you're going back and forth with them. So not just sending that document blindly. So those are the kind of things that have been helpful for people to really grasp how it can change their day-to-day job. And then I think one of the other things is making sure that you have those evangelists across all of your different functions, as well as infusing some of the right talent. And maybe that might be looking outside at where people have been successful at adopting these solutions and being able to tell those stories. Because at the end of the day, telling someone there's this great tool, until they really see the benefit for them, it's hard for them to make that change, have that trust in that solution that we were talking about earlier. And lastly, I think being able to show that in a measurable way can also be helpful. So being able to share out statistics on how efficient people were able to get in terms of doing their job, leveraging these tools. And maybe even one of the things that we also publish is how many people are actually using these tools as well, can be helpful. A little bit of FOMO to make people feel, that they might be missing out on this big transformative solution. Because I think you are hearing about generative AI and agentic AI across in the everyday media. And so people are interested and want to get involved, but sometimes aren't sure how.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a huge fun element to it about celebrating things that are successful, but also celebrating the failures of like, hey, AI doesn't work in this case. And, taking the joy and the pride in saying, I broke AI. Right. So it's really that excitement of being able to use and experiment with it. So thank you for sharing that, Jana. And Cliff, maybe I'll come to you next. Operationalizing risk management, especially when it comes to AI, GenAI, is challenging, right? So could you share, a couple of challenges in actually implementing some of the risk and controls or, some of the policies and the techniques you were mentioning before?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different challenges that come into play here. The first one is that there's really no one person that can manage AI risk all by themselves. It's a transverse risk. It impacts a lot of different areas. So you really need to bring groups of people together, align on philosophy on risk management, and agree on whose responsibility it is to do different activities. You can't sometimes, I've seen organizations try to put in place, one person or one function tries to put in place the risk management program, and then sort of from the bully pulpit tell everyone what they're doing. You don't get the buy-in that way, and it slows things down. It really doesn't work. So I think communication is really key. That's one of the big one of the big challenges here, that these organizations, very often people work in silos. They're not used to sort of working across the board. The second thing is around how to operationalize risk management. It's in the early days where an organization had maybe 1 or 2 GenAI applications, you could pass it around or govern it by committee and say, okay, well, the model risk folks are going to look at this for a little while, then they're going to pass it to the cyber risk folks, and then, oh, there's a question on data ethics, let's send it up to the lawyers, right? But when you have GenAI embedded within multiple different vendor solutions, when the tools are relatively easy to use, democratized, as they say, and anyone can start to build solutions, you get to a point where you need a way to actually operationalize it. And people are looking to their GRC tools or their model management tools and things like that. Like in the long run, when we have 100 or more, how will we really make sure that we're following the protocols? Those are some of the bigger ticket issues in actually implementing these programs.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Cliff. And really to bring this section all together, right? We heard different types of risks, from top-down stakeholder risks to the human side, the risk side, but it has been done. We are seeing clients successfully been able to navigate it. So, definitely don't let it hinder your progression. Shifting gears to the last one, right? Looking ahead, what's the outlook? Look, personally, I think this is just a fascinating space, right? If you think about where we were from Excel macros to then automation to then RPA to then AI ML to now agents, right? But it doesn't stop there. We are literally maybe 8 to 10 years from AGI, and that's exciting. And it's really going to challenge us all in not only thinking about our individual processes with agents, but literally like reimagining the entire organization and the entire industry as a whole. So, really exciting time, and we'll see how it progresses. But as we are drawing to a close, I would love to invite my amazing panelists in for a quick one piece of advice that you would like to leave our audience with. So, no particular order, Roland, I'll start off with you.
If you haven't started, get started now and make sure you involve your business partners on a journey. It will be key to unlocking true value.
Thank you. Cliff?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of what I was talking about before, making sure that you really get alignment with everyone in the organization that plays a role here. That's really important. And then the other one is keep track, try your best to stay on top of the regulatory environment. People aren't really waiting for the regulations to kick in to drive their risk management because it's that important. But we're living in a world where there's changing global regulations, potentially hundreds of different state and local laws. There's industry standards. All of this comes into play. So really important that you keep an eye on those moving things as well. That would be my advice.
Yeah. And Jana?
I think a little related to what Roland was saying about the get started, but taking it from the next level down of making sure that you do have that focus on adoption and the buy-in from the business and the actual users, because we have certainly been in a lot of cases building out POCs, and it was the adoption piece that actually ended up creating some challenges with getting it into production. So don't forget about making sure that you're bringing those team members along the journey and getting started, but also getting people comfortable with using the solution. So that adoption is super, super critical to success.
Absolutely. And then I will wrap it up with my personal favorite, which is get your data right. Because without having good data, you're just not going to be able to take full advantage of that. So I know we could keep going on this topic for like another hour, no problem, but I know we're getting closer to the time. We barely touched the surface on several of the items. We've tried to do our best in the Q&A, but if we haven't gotten to anything, we will follow up. If there are any questions, please do reach out. I do want to take a quick moment and thank you, Roland, Cliff, Jana, for joining us today. It was such a fun discussion. Also, big thanks to our amazing organizing team who really makes all of this happen. And then last but not the least, a special thank you to the amazing audience who joined in. I was keeping a slight eye on the Q&A, so thank you for the engagement. We value it. And we hope that you'll join us for the next debrief. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.